Welcome to Beth's Happy Home. If you watched my last video, you know I've been very busy with my book launch. I published a historical fiction novel called Expelled, a story of the Polish resistance. It's available on Amazon and Kindle, and I urge you to check it out, by Beth M. Stevenson. But in the meantime, all of these natural disasters are happening, and I think you might be concerned about whether or not you are actually prepared. So I've made this emergency checklist, and I'm going to go over it with you, and I'll be brief. The first consideration in emergency preparedness is water storage, because that is a human's most pressing need. Now, we can't anticipate everything that might happen, but that's something that even in a lesser situation where it just happens that the water supply is contaminated and you're without water for a couple of weeks, it would be a huge inconvenience if you didn't have any stored and had to go round it up at the grocery store, which is very quickly going to sell out. So have a minimum of 14 gallons of water per person for a 2-week supply. Now, it's wise to store much more than that, but that's the minimum amount. And if you live in an apartment, that might be the maximum you have space for. I recommend that if you don't have a place to store a 55-gallon water drum or a 35-gallon water drum, that you store it in the soda bottles. The 2-liter soda bottles are sturdy, they don't break down readily, and they make good storage for water. And I recommend that you do not use milk jugs. Milk jugs are designed, the plastic in them is made to break down really quickly, and so you may have 10 gallons of water stored in your closet and you're feeling smug that you have taken care of that, and then one day you go in and the carpet is soaked because the plastic broke down, you dropped something on a fragile plastic milk jug and a hole was made, and you've got a mess and you've got property damage, and so they break down very quickly. Don't use milk jugs. The second thing that you need to consider is food. Now, emergency preparedness experts recommend that you have a 3-month supply of food that you ordinarily eat. Now, these are going to be things that you rotate all the time. So you're eating through your spaghetti noodles and so that you would be able to live without much change in your diet for 3 months. Then next, once you've got the water stored and the food for 3 months stored, make sure that you have an emergency kit. Now, this is for a disaster situation. And in your emergency kit, there are other videos on my channel where I explain what needs to go into it and the least expensive way to assemble it. But you need food, water, shelter, like a tarp that you can drape over a rope between 2 posts, something to keep the weather off, something to keep you warm, first aid, extra clothes, medicines, that you're going to need to last 72 hours, because in a major disaster, help will be on its way, but you may need to survive on your own for about 72 hours. That's what is commonly expected. And then next is, once you have your water, your food, and your bug out kit, your emergency kit, you want to be working, or probably simultaneous with all of these other things, you want to be working toward having a savings in money of about 6 months worth of living expenses. Now, this is for a job loss, or if you have your car burns up and you need a new car, and you're not going to have to go into debt. You're going to be ready to handle your own problems because you are prepared, and you're going to have great peace of mind. So those are the first 4 priorities: water, food for 3 months, a bug out kit for disasters, living expenses for other sorts of long-term disasters. Next thing on the list is going to be fuel. Now, as I said earlier, I have videos on each one of these categories, and so you can look up the fuel. There's a fuel calculator on there that shows how to know how much you need, and it probably is not as much as you might think. I recommend storing propane just because it's so accessible, and you can get those propane stoves that are very easy to use and even safe under certain circumstances to use indoors. So have enough fuel to cook your food for as long as you deem you can reasonably store it, because you've done the other things already. You want at least 3 months supply, and I would recommend having a year's supply of fuel so that you can cook your food for at least a year in case of a complete supply chain breakdown. The next is your long-term storage. Now this is going to be foods that you keep in storage, such as grains and beans and powdered milk, and you're not necessarily going to be cycling through these. These are going to be stored in a cool, dark place somewhere, and you want to have a year's worth, and you want them to be properly stored so that they do not deteriorate. But you don't necessarily need to rotate these because they are going to be good for a very long time, and there's expense involved in rotating them. If you're going to rotate and have wheat and beans and grains and things like that in your regular diet, which is highly recommended, use the bags that haven't been stored for long term, and don't be opening up your buckets with the oxygen absorbers in there, because it's kind of a waste of the oxygen absorbers to do it that way. So those are the 6 areas of emergency preparedness that are kind of the general categories. There are separate videos on Beth's Happy Home for each of those, but I also recommend that you get yourself a solar radio, and that solar radio has a charging station so you can charge your cell phones and keep yourself up to date with what's happening around you, other emergencies or places that you need to evacuate to. You can have all that information if you have a radio. A fire extinguisher, always in every place where you're likely to be making a flame. You have something that you're ready to put that fire out in case it gets out of control. A home exit plan that everyone in your family has rehearsed and understands. And I recommend that you go to providentliving.com, and that will help you to calculate how much food you're going to need and what you're going to need for your long-term storage, as well as some of your short-term storage, and there's all kinds of information on there that's very helpful. So providentliving.com is the place I recommend going to. And I hope that you can use this checklist to give yourself peace of mind and to be truly prepared for whatever might come your way. Nobody knows what's going to happen next, and the times are getting very exciting. I hope that you get yourself prepared and that your family is kept safe. Thanks for visiting Beth's Happy Home, and come back soon.